And now I'd like to introduce to you Dr. Edward Daley, who will present a few remarks on socialized medicine.
Ladies and gentlemen, I didn't bring the book up to read it. And I'm pleased to be in a city that has, in the past, been such an important site in our country's history. I've lived in two of the cities that I consider are great in the establishment of our country: Williamsburg, Virginia, the home of Patrick Henry, and Philadelphia, where they have the Independence Hall, where they had the Constitutional Convention, and I've visited Sam Adams Town many times. It's strange that the idea started in a northern city and a mid-southern city and were crystallized in between. It was just like a meeting of the minds. Now, there are a few things I would like to say, and that's about semantics. I always insist that I am not against socialized medicine, because there is a place for it in the Army, the Navy, and the Public Health Service. There are certain areas, such as epidemiology, inspection of ports, where it must be under some governmental entity. What I am against, and I believe we should be more precise about our words, and I think you are considering it here today, is political medicine. I am against the exploitation of people and a branch of our culture called medicine for political gain. And this does not come, I want to contradict, out of the blue, out of the mist, because in political activity for centuries, well, maybe not century, many centuries, but when the political activists, the conquerors, the dictators laid their plans, and they had learned to write or could get somebody to write for them, they always wrote about their intentions. The founders of communism did that. Hitler did it, and the word was there for those who would pick it up. So they tell you what they will do. The architect of our present system, if you can call it a system, they call the medical profession a non-system. That comes under the heading of mini-thought. You give them a slogan with about 4 or 5 syllables, and that's the slogan for the day. But if you go back, I must say, the part of the medical profession, that we have quite a system. In 1910, there were many, many medical schools throughout the United States. Some of them left much to be desired. And a man named Flexner, with the cooperation and encouragement of the American Medical Association, undertook a study. And as a result of that study, many, many, many substandard schools were closed, and eventually we had nothing but Class A schools in this country. And the medical profession did it. It was not done by congressional or legislative action. Similarly, all states passed licensure laws. When I passed my examination in New York State, the day I got my license, I could call myself a neurosurgeon one day, a specialist in dermatology another, practice psychiatry the next, and be perfectly legal. There was no imposition. I had the whole gamut of medicine in front of me, and I could legally proclaim myself a specialist in anything. But again, the physicians and the dentists were a little bit ahead of the legislatures. maybe we had more of a feeling for people. I like to think so. I'm a doctor because I like people. If I hated people, I'd probably be a veterinarian or something else. When I get some of them, I wish I was a veterinarian. Any veterinarians present, I love you. I take my animals to you all the time. Anyway, I like people, and I hope some of them like me, but they don't all, so we can't help that. And the main desire of the physicians who are articulate against the political medicine is basically to preserve the quality of medical care. Let me say this. If our country ever loses quality medicine, like other countries have who have gone down the road to political medicine, it may take you forever or never to be regained. So let us make no bones about it. We are accused of being opposed because of economics. You give me a student who will go to medicine and study and try to improve himself so he reaches the highest pinnacle of quality in whatever field of medicine he wants to enter, then enters the public market and is fair with people and treats them as he would like to be treated. It's a pretty old rule, the golden rule, but if he gives the best within him to everybody who comes to him, he doesn't have to worry about economics. He'll get all the economics he wants. But more than that, he'll get some emotional satisfaction that no money can buy. And I run a referral practice. And I can remember one day in my office, these old couple came to me. At various times over the years, the husband had been a patient. The wife had been a patient. I don't remember which one was the patient at the moment. And there was a doctor who was a general practitioner. He was loved very much. In fact, his patients, when he was in practice 25 years, they held a week celebration, and they even went to church and had a mass for him. It started a rumor that he was dead because his patients always thought you had to be dead to have a mass for you. But it was a mass of thanksgiving for this doctor. It's 25 years. But that day when they got here, Dr. Doherty had died. And these two people stood in my office and cried. And they said, "What will we do?" Well, you're like, there's no other person in the world. And this is the kind of satisfaction you get when you practice with the golden rule at the best quality. This is the thing that'll be aborted by politicians. And this is why we come to Denver, San Francisco. I haven't been to Alaska yet, but I'll go. Hope I don't have to go in winter. But I have a very, very cooperative associate in my office. He's a better listener than a talker. I'm a better talker than a listener, except when I'm with a patient. So he minds the store while I go around and talk in Boston or various other places. Well, anyway, another thing that we want to preserve, and this is the thing that has the psychiatrists all shaken up in New York State, because they're trying to write a new code. It's about, it's a book of, 900 pages or so, but I only know one man who read it. Thank God he read it, because he was amazed, and when he alerted the psychiatric societies of psychiatry, I should say, there's nothing psychiatric about them. When he told them was in there, they were all against it. They weren't just lukewarm, they were against it. Because another thing we want to do in this country as doctors is preserve the confidentiality of the patient's relationship with the doctor. Now, the lawyers have this privilege. I don't think it's a privilege of a man who practices law or medicine or a journalist. I think it's a right of the one who goes to him. And the lawyers refuse to divulge things if it is given in confidence. The journalists refuse to divulge the sources of their information, and they have gone to jail to preserve it. And there at present is a doctor in California. He's a psychiatrist. He treated a patient. Said patient is involved in a lawsuit in court, not against the doctor. There's two people having a lawsuit. One of them happened to be a patient of this psychiatrist. He has been ordered by the Supreme Court, or whatever corresponds to the Supreme Court of the state of California, to produce his records and testify in this case, and he has refused. He has been sentenced to jail for contempt of court. For that court, I couldn't have anything but contempt. And right now, he is under jail sentence. I think it is being appealed, so he's staying out of jail temporarily. And I do believe we've collected enough money to take it to the Supreme Court. I am proud to be a member of a profession where a man would go to jail before he would betray the confidence of a patient. You know, the weakness of medicine, actually, in this situation, is the devotion of doctors to duty. As I told you before, the only reason I can afford to come here, and I don't mean afford in economic sense, I mean afford from time taken from care of patients, is due to the fact that I have a very fine man who works with me, and he understands what's going on. So when I go on these excursions, he works twice as hard to take care of the patients. To go back to the track record of the politicians and the track record of the doctors, as I said before, I mentioned the Flexner report. I told you when I obtained my license in New York State, I could do anything in medicine legally. I wouldn't say I could do it morally. But that doesn't, evidently there's no morals in politicians anymore. I don't know. No. The doctors felt that the licenses were not good enough, so they established boards, which are systems set up by physicians. They're nothing to do with the government, and they say if you want to practice, the eye doctors were the first, as a specialist in ophthalmology, we will qualify you as a specialist, but you will have to do this and this and this. This and this consisted mainly of a certain amount of postgraduate work and training and all that. And you will have to pass an examination. If you do, then you are certified, meaning that we say that you are a qualified specialist. This had no approval of Congress, no approval of any assembly, not even the Board of Aldermen got in the act. And that was in 1934 when it started. In the eye, and then the general practitioners have a similar thing, and a man, to retain his certification, must keep up his education. Now the political forces have found out about it, and they want to impose some system where we have to take exams periodically. Well, we've been doing that for 30-some-odd years. And let me tell you, as fast as they come up, we'll keep ahead of them. We'll have a better track record if quality is the thing you're after. If votes are what you're after, we're amateurs. I just spoke about the boards, which the doctors have to do. Now they have discovered the certification of hospitals. They, fellas you vote for. This was started by the American College of Surgeons, which was founded in 1913 to improve the quality, get the word quality of surgery practiced in the United States and Canada, because most of our societies don't acknowledge the border. The Canadian doctors belong to our societies. We belong to them. In fact, the whole Western Hemisphere has a sort of a mutual relationship. I know I belong to societies because I belong to one of the United States, from the North Pole to the South Pole, but only in the Western Hemisphere. So we have certification of hospitals started by American College of Surgeons. And there again, we're ahead of them. Now, somebody mentioned study groups. Well, they're a very interesting study group. A study group is a group of people who are brought together to study a problem and come up with some recommendations. And it's really something to see how these are gathered. There's a book was published about 3 years ago by a lady named Marjorie Sheeran, who was an expert in Social Security systems, who wrote, she's not a lawyer, but she's a PhD in social things. And she wrote the brief that was used in the Supreme Court to defend the Social Security. And she wrote one of a fellow she watched who first came to Washington in 1931 after he graduated from college. And his name is Wilbur J. Cohen. He's the architect, Medicare, Medicaid, and everything else. And in here, she talks about study groups. Well, study groups, he's a master of study groups. He picks the people carefully, he knows their minds, and he knows what conclusion they'll come to. It'd be like having Hitler examine Mussolini and vice versa and come up with a canonization of his one has been studied. And as far as, I remember I told you about they write things. Here's a speech, quite heavy, I'm not going to read it, given by Mr. Cohen in a meeting in 1967, LaSalle Hotel, Chicago, August 19, in which he just tells you what he's going to do. So you know, if you just watch these fellows' publications and listen to their speeches, you'll find out what they're going to do. Now, I remember some years ago in this country, there was a very fine automobile made, and the manufacturer had a very fine ad. He said, "Ask the man who owns one." Now, the American people are being asked to consider a system of medicine, and a laboratory is readily available in other countries to study. I'm reminded, I'm coming up with Dr. McNeil. I said, "You know, Ed, seems funny, but if I was asked to buy something that's marvelous," I said, "if a man came to my door of my house and said, 'Sir, I want to convert your furnace from oil to garbage,' and he said, 'Now this is a new invention,' and he said, you don't have to buy oil. We got plenty of garbage. Everybody's complaining about garbage. So you shovel the garbage into your furnace, or automatic feed into the furnace. Any smoke comes up, the chimney gets every impurity out of it, and it comes out as pure air. How about ashes? Oh, we have a little ashes. Yes, you can't avoid that. But they come out at the side of the furnace as gold bricks. Well, you know, I'd sort of say, who has this furnace that you know of? He says, "Well, we sold one to Mr. Miller, your next door neighbor." I said, "Would you mind if I go over and ask him first and see how his furnace works?" Well, I went over and saw how the furnaces work. I got on the lines and went to the various hospitals. And let me tell you, ask the man who owns one is a good idea, because you can project in future. You know, we had Saskatchewan province a few years ago. You heard about they were going to take over. They did. Factories, mines, everything. Nobody would ever pay taxes again. Beautiful little, ask the man who owned one. Well, I heard the present prime minister, or is it of the state, corresponds to governor, who was elected on a conservative party, and who is trying to reverse this thing, because they never made a dime on anything they ran. In fact, it cost money. The doctors emigrated, and I'm the doctors had a strike. This to me is like a case of measles. This doesn't fit in my book, any strike against people, because no matter who you're fighting, don't let the patient get caught in the middle. That's my attitude. So